Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion. Today we have a very interesting topic that we'll discuss. With me I have 5 panelists from across Africa and Sweden, fortunately, but she's also an African to some extent. So the topic that we'll be dwelling on today is the link between energy poverty and environmental pollution. Contrary to popular belief, countries that use only small amount of energy per person are not necessarily better able to protect the environment. And electricity, especially clean electricity, can substitute for all manner of dirty fuels and overburden the natural environment for meeting the basic human needs. We will discuss the role of nuclear energy as a clean energy source to simultaneously elevate energy poverty and environmental pollution and degradation. So for this moment, I would like to thank our panelists for agreeing to come to our discussion today to give us an insightful discussion on this topic. With me, I have Ms. Patricia, who is Director for RePlanet Africa. And on the second one, I have Robert, who is a nuclear engineering student in Moscow University. And then I have, on the third one, I have Abubakar, who is a lecturer at Nigeria University. And the fourth one, I have Aaanstoot, who is a pro-nuclear advocate and coming from RePlanet as well. And lastly, I have Alfred, all the way from Sierra Leone, who is a Leotech CEO, as well as a leader for the innovation in a university in Sierra Leone. With that said, welcome everyone, and we shall dive in the topic of today. So I have a question to all of you that we'd like to hear. And this question is, could you tell us what is this topic means in your own geographic and economic context? You have about 3 minutes to tell us in your own words and your own perspective on what this topic means to you.
Thank you, Amanda. It's really a pleasure to be here this afternoon. It's working. Yes. Like I was introduced, my name is Patricia Nanteza, and I serve as the director of RePlanet Africa. What this topic means to me is basically just shedding a light on the biomass fuels. I come from Uganda, and we use 90% charcoal and firewood for our cooking fuel. And what that means is that because we have very limited access to electricity, we are forced to use biomass fuels to cook our food, that is charcoal and firewood. And firewood comes from the forests. So because of our energy poverty, we are forced to destroy our environment. Not because we want to destroy our environment, but we are left with no option. So what this means is that we are seeing people in Africa or people in Uganda. If we have this conversation without paying attention to the social implications of energy poverty, it would be us saying that we are telling the people of Uganda, choose between eating or saving the environment. And that is a choice that should not be given to anyone. So as we go forward in the discussion, maybe we'll talk about solutions and what we can do about that. But that is my context. In order for us to eat food, we must destroy our environment. Not because we want to, but we have limited options. Hydroelectric power is expensive. Liquefied natural gas is expensive. But we would love to use these cleaner sources of energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. We can hear from you what's happening in Kenya and what's the context.
Thank you for joining us today. As Amanda introduced me, I'm Robert Kiptoo from Kenya, but I'm currently doing my master's in nuclear engineering in Moscow Physics Institute in Russia. And I'm glad to be here to join the discussion on the link between energy poverty and environmental pollution. So I'm from Kenya. Most of our energy is generated via hydro and geothermal, but a big chunk as well is generated from burning of the biomass fuel, as Patricia initially said. So our countries are close to each other, so we share a couple of things. So especially in the rural areas, people don't have people lack access to, especially the clean electricity. So they are forced to go into the forest, cut down some trees, burn charcoal, maybe burn some wood as well, which in the end, it ends up messing up the environment. Of course, deforestation is very bad for the environment because the trees plays a crucial role in the climate thing. And so in the future, we are looking at the government doing more things, especially like expanding the energy capacity so that we can be able to serve the whole country as a nation. Yeah, so looking forward to the discussion and more an interactive session. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you. You can hear from Abubakar now.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you everyone for having me today. My name is Abubakar Sadiq Aliyu from Nigeria, working with the Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainability Transitions, Bayo University, Kano. Also, an active member of the African Young Generation in Nuclear. Coming back to the topic, the link between energy poverty and environmental pollution. Well, first of all, we need to know that there's a direct connection between energy and development. National development. It's a fact when you look at the index of development with countries and the energy they consume. For example, the US, in 2022, I think 2022, the energy consumed was about 4 trillion kilowatt hour, while coming back to my country, Nigeria, about 3.1 terawatt hour. That's a huge distance. Now, when you come to the development aspect, it's also similar. So if you are asking for the development index for a particular country, just look at the energy consumption. Now coming back to energy poverty and the link to environmental pollution. Energy poverty, from my own perspective, is the lack of access to electricity and clean cooking energy, which leads to people trying to look for solution for themselves, and that may make them venture into using fuels like biomass and diesels. A case study of my country, Nigeria, where about we have energy access of about 60%, but then for the rural area is less than 50. Now, for cooking and other domestic activities, they will need to look for solutions for themselves, which includes biomass, charcoal, and other things. And then coming back to the medium and small enterprises who require energy for their own businesses to run, they will also definitely need to look for alternatives. And those alternatives include diesels and then gasoline. It's worth noting that the pollution in the sub-Saharan Africa is the least in terms of significance in the whole world. But then, if this is not a problem, then what is the problem and what is the link to environmental pollution? Definitely, in my own understanding, this has to do with a direct effects on the individuals living in those areas, especially with respect to their health, and then also deforestation. Health, mainly respiratory ailments, and then a high rate of death in infants. But then when you look at the other aspect, which is deforestation, that's the most disastrous part because it contributes to climate change problems. So this is my own perspective, and I look forward to more discussions and interactive sessions with everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abubakar. We would like to hear from Iya.
Hi, everyone. I'll try to make myself heard, but I've been talking non-stop for 2 weeks, so my voice is dead. I live in Sweden, and I think that I can firmly say that I am the only one on this panel from a country where everyone has access to a washing machine, and like 80% of the population has access to a dishwasher, if not even more. And I think that's a good point to start it, because a lot of the time I think when we from Western countries think about energy poverty, we are quick to think about, oh, you can't run a PlayStation or you can't own a TV. And that's not really what we're talking about. And I think we have to be very clear on that when we're talking about energy poverty, we're talking about fundamental matters of equality and improvement of life conditions, that we're talking about access to things like a washing machine or a dishwasher, things that fundamentally make life easier. Because I think that no matter how fond of nature or the environment you are as a person from the global north, I think we can all agree that you are more fond of your washing machine. And if you aren't, I want to ask you, have you ever washed your clothes by hand? Otherwise, just like, please try that once and then you'll be with us on this. Like, it's I've done it once on a scout camp. It was not a fun experience. I'm never doing it again. Like, washing machines, brilliant stuff. We should have more of them. And I think, like, we really have to keep that in mind, that we're not talking about these great advantages and these great privileges. And we're not talking about frivolous stuff. We're talking about basic life necessities and basic measures of inequality and reducing household labor and dangerous labor outside the house. We're talking about access to flowing water. We're talking about very, very basic things when we talk about solving energy poverty. And I think that information is very hard to see from someone from the global north, where a lot of the times when we think about electricity, it's normally the things that in our household we think of as we turn them on and off. So it'll be things like your PC. Like, I'm fairly certain that, like, I have a fairly high-end gaming PC. I'm fairly certain my gaming PC on its own takes more electricity than most households in sub-Saharan Africa. Like, and I understand that that's a privilege, but that's not where we are starting this conversation. We're starting this conversation off with, do you have a washing machine? If not, well, you should be able to get one.
Thank you very much. Yeah, from that perspective, it's basically as you are saying, that it's a survival mode for Africans and with the issues of energy. We can hear from Sierra Leone and the issues of energy poverty and environmental pollution. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Amanda, thank you so much. I am Alfred Mbayo from Sierra Leone, and I am president of the Sierra Leone Young Generation in Nuclear. I sat back there and I was thinking what to say, because our problems are a bit similar across Africa. And my colleagues from Sub-Saharan Africa have already kind of deliberated on most of the problems, the common problems we face as Africans in relation to energy access and pollution. But I want to deviate a bit to look at energy poverty from a different perspective according to the IRENA. Energy poverty is mostly considered in terms of access, but I think according to IRENA, it goes beyond access. If your electricity generation is mostly dependent on dirty fuel or fuel that is not clean and sustainable, then there are chances that you are also energy poor. Because imagine now we are all talking about decarbonization. So just imagine we wake up overnight and we say we want to remove all the 100 million barrels of oil that is consumed per day across the globe. Most economy will wreck simply because they depend so much on dirty fuel. So like Ia rightly said, we have economies that are not energy poor directly according to access, but they are also energy poor because they are dependent so much on dirty fuel. For my country, Sierra Leone, we have less than 26% national electrification rate, and you would only imagine how that looks like. You have 8 million people living on less than 100 megawatt of electricity. That is the reality of our challenge, and it becomes so difficult for you to even talk about development, national development, let alone talk about climate adaptation. Because you cannot really adapt to climate or be climate resilient if you do not have access to electricity. Because most of the enabling technologies you need to adapt to climate, they all depend on electricity for them to function. You need early warning systems, you need a lot of other things you need to put in place to be resilient to climate change. And all of these things need electricity. So we are here talking about climate change for the 29th time since COP was found. and still the globe is consuming 100 million barrels of oil per day. So this makes sense somehow, but it doesn't make sense all the way around. And Africa is bearing the heavy weight of climate change. Africa contributes less than 4% to global emission, but yet it is disproportionately affected by the effect of climate change. In my country, Sierra Leone, we've lost almost $100 million to just climate-related disasters. Just last year, we had flash floods. Of course, that is just on a yearly basis, flash floods in Freetown. The most devastating one was a mudslide that was caused by torrential rain, and you have mudsliding downhill, which led to the loss of many lives. Around 5,000 people died, and of course, a property loss that is equivalent to hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is the reality of our situation in African countries, and I strongly believe that the way we generate and consume energy has been the greatest determinant of global emission and pollution. So I really look forward to discussing more on this in the subsequent questions as the panel continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panelists. I think it was very concise and comprehensive. We can all pick up that most of the issues in Africa, it's more of a survival issue. People are using these dirty fuels mainly for survival. So it's a matter of choosing life and or choosing to save the planet at this very current moment. So now we'll check if, because you are coming from different communities, I would like to hear more about what are the activities that you currently engaged in that are going to alleviate these issues of environmental pollution and sustainable transition to cleaner energies in your own communities. And I'll start with Patricia for this matter. As the director of RePlanet, are there actionable and sustainable strategies in place to tackle the mentioned issues of environmental pollution and energy disadvantaged communities?
Great. I love that question, Amanda, because we are launching a campaign called Switch on Africa tomorrow in the Blue Zone. So this is an open invitation to all of you. Please come to the Blue Zone. We shall communicate the room early in the morning where we are launching this campaign. Now, the Switch on Africa campaign is a campaign that is looking to address energy poverty. In other words, we want to light our continent because, like we have had, most of us are below 30% access to energy, and we want to move that to 100%. So what particular activities are we engaged with in this campaign? Although we are launching it, we have already had some activities taking place. But first and foremost, I would like to bring to our attention that the World Bank defines energy access, the basic minimum of energy access, as having access to electricity for 4 hours a day, and those 4 hours don't have to be consistent. They can be intermittent 4 hours a day, and you can light one light bulb and a switch. So when they come to our countries, that is what they are providing. They have a very great project called Rural Electrification Agency. It's been very active in Uganda and probably maybe other African countries, but that is the bare minimum. When they work to improve energy access on the continent, they are saying we want everyone to have access to a light bulb, a socket, and electricity 4 hours a day intermittently. We heard from Ia and what she was talking about. It felt like stuff out of the movies. For her, life comes to an end if her washing machine can't work. In Africa, the World Bank is saying one light bulb. So this campaign is saying, no, you must change that policy. We want 100% access to electricity, not intermittently, on a stable basis. If my house has 6 light bulbs, I need to light 6 light bulbs. I should be able to power my washing machine. My children should play games if they want to, and do everything else that the Global North is doing. So that is the very first activity. We are saying no to this policy. It must change so that when they come to our countries, they are giving us more than mere survival. Secondly, we are calling on African governments to increase their energy mix. My country is very big on hydroelectric power because we have so many waterfalls. We have access to water, and that is great. But there is also a limit to hydroelectric power. We are saying consider solar, consider wind, and consider nuclear. My country, Uganda, has considered all these four. They're also considering nuclear, and we are saying kudos to them. We are saying kudos to Kenya. We are saying kudos to Ghana that just signed that agreement recently of tripling nuclear energy. Just 2 days ago, Nigeria is having talks. So they're like, Egypt is having talks. So there are like 10 countries that are considering nuclear energy. And we're saying, well done, but please move beyond planning. Let us see these small reactors being constructed and power actually being sent to the grid and being used. So African countries, we are saying, consider nuclear, consider all the clean energy, all the clean energies in the energy mix. This particular message goes to the African Union because when they met in Nairobi in August and they presented the energy plan, the continental-wide energy plan, nuclear energy was not in the mix. It is a laughable joke to think that we are going to lift Africa into prosperity on wind, on solar, and hydroelectric power. The other day, I asked our friends from the global north if any of them powers their economies on wind and solar, and none of them said yes. So why does the AU think that Africa can do that? So to the African Union, we are saying, bring nuclear on board. And we are not just here for nuclear. We are saying together is better. We want all the clean energy sources. So we shall be delivering a petition later in the year to the African Union. And then finally, to the ordinary Africans, we have come up with a pledge, an energy pledge. It's called, we are asking Africans to pledge to reduce charcoal use. Our governments are going to put in place bans, but we know that charcoal has been banned on the continent for so long, and yet this trade is still thriving. It's illegal and thriving because we are fueling this trade. So I want to tell African men and women that it takes a tree 7 years to grow. And that one tree, when it is cut down, it gives you only 1 bag of charcoal. An average African family of 6 people uses that bag of charcoal for maybe 2 weeks. It takes nature 7 years to grow a tree, and you destroy it in 2 weeks. So we are calling upon you to please also take responsibility. The pledge is up. We are launching it tomorrow, and we are asking Africans to please sign this pledge, sign it, and reduce charcoal usage in your homes. Slowly but surely. We are not saying stop it immediately, but most of us in urban areas, we can afford fairly cleaner sources of energy, like let's say LNG. Please move away from biofuels as our governments bring nuclear on board, as our governments continue implementing all these bans, and the World Bank revises its policies. Let us also take initiative. So those are the 4 activities that we are involved in. And again, I reiterate, please come tomorrow if you're interested in these details. The Africans here, I request you to please sign that pledge and leave it out when you go back home. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. That was mouthful and very much insightful, honestly. I didn't know that a tree takes 7 years, for instance, to grow. So now we hear from Kenya, and in Kenya, a large proportion of your energy comes from geothermal, wind, solar, and 40% of the population still doesn't have access to energy. However, you are a student, so I think you have big dreams to solve these big issues generally. So as a nuclear engineer student, do you think the policies align with your technical training that you are receiving abroad? And what direct impact does this have on the current topic of discussion?
That's a really good question. In terms of policies, I think we can all agree that the government plays a huge role in making of these policies. And I think the government can address these issues based on maybe short-term policies and maybe long-term policies. And in terms of the short-term policies, what the government can do, in my perspective, I think, they can try and introduce short-term solutions to access to quick energy solutions things like off-grid solar panels. So like, of course, in the rural areas, they can't have access to these. Maybe the hydros, maybe because Kenya is such a, it's not really a small country if you compare to other countries. It's such a huge country. So in the rural areas, so instead of the burning charcoal and maybe burning coal, they can introduce solar panels so that they can be able to make use of the solar panels instead of burning charcoal. And maybe what the government can also do is try and educate the population in the rural areas that burning of this charcoal and small fossil fuels is not good for their health. So many of those people, they don't really know what they are doing when they are maybe burning those charcoal fuels. So when the government can come in and try and educate them that this thing is not good for your health, try and use other sources which might, even though they're not sustainable, they're just good for the short term usage. And in the long term, as a nuclear engineering student, I'm hoping that the government can open its eyes and invest in energy sources which are clean and more so sustainable. Also things like nuclear power. Nuclear power is, as we are all here, net zero nuclear hub. So nuclear energy is more of it produces huge amounts of power, and more so it's very clean, it's sustainable, and it's reliable. So actually in our country, if we just build one nuclear power plant, because we have huge capacities of geothermal, we have huge capacity of hydro as well, so we need to diversify our electricity grid, because other sources such as hydro and geothermal, they might not be that sustainable and reliable, but with nuclear it ticks all the boxes. So when the government invests in projects such as nuclear, so it can really address mainly all the challenges that we are currently facing. So I'll just urge the government to look deep into the issue, to look deep into this energy poverty thing, and maybe try and focus on investing on clean sources like nuclear energy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. And I hope your government is listening. The president was around anyways, so hopefully he hears this. And now we'll move to Abubakar, and we'll hear what he has to say. And Abubakar, as a lecturer at your university, do you think that the curriculum aligns with the policies in terms of the policies that speak to energy poverty as well as environmental issues in Nigeria? And what is a direct impactor to the young people? What are you currently doing to make sure that the curriculum is adaptable and changes as the policies change? Because we know whenever government changes, the policy changes. So is this a ductile curriculum that can adapt to all these policy changes?
Thank you very much. But before that, let me chip into the Kenyan matter. I can see Collins, an upcoming politician here. So when you ask is the government here, I think Collins is an upcoming politician. So Robert, I think your message had been delivered. Well, coming back to the question, thank you very much, Amanda, for that wonderful question. Like you said, I'm a researcher with the Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainability Transitions with my university. One thing we've realized is that academicians are still in their old shells, strictly studying physics, biology, chemistry, and then when you look at the policymakers and look at the researchers, it seems there's no flow. The frequency is not the same. And if we remain in this shell, studying independently without coming together to prefer solutions to the current problems, then it will remain like that forever. Now, and that is why my center and other similar centers have looked into the issues. Now we are trying to look at the problem and then come up with the solutions. Part of the solutions is, in my center we have 3 thematic areas. We have the biofuels, we have the solar unit, and then we have us, the nuclear unit. So working together in the same center. So you see, that's a kind of bringing different thematic areas together in order to pursue problems instead of the individual way of addressing things. Before I come here, myself and my colleagues have been working on a curriculum that will suit the problem at hand. That's the best way of solving it, because to us, university is just like a simulation of the larger environment. This is where you solve problems. Unlike the notion is in most African countries where, and even other countries where the university is just a center to go and get papers. We are trying to change that notion, and that is why, like I said, we are coming up with curriculums to meet the problems, especially also to include some of the aspect of policy, because we also understand that the scientists are working without understanding what really the policy is. And likewise, the policy makers are also doing this independently. So there's no coherence between them. So we are trying to come up with people who understand as much as they can the policies, likewise as much as they can the science. So in all the units, we have different courses, and then we have multidisciplinary courses like Masters in Renewable Energy and PhD, and we also have Masters in Nuclear Energy and other nuclear or other energy-related courses. So this is what we have been doing, and I hope this will solve some of the problems we are having. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abubakar, and it's very important because, as you mentioned, that we need coherence. We cannot be working in silos, so we need to make sure that our curriculum fits into the strategic goals of the nation at large. Now I would like to come to Iya. Iya, you have lived in two economies. You have lived in Kenya, the so-called global south, and you are also living currently in the global north in Sweden. What contrast and commonalities can you draw out relating to energy poverty and environmental pollution in this regard?
So I'm going to start by just making the numbers clear. By land mass, Kenya and Sweden have nearly the exact same land mass. Kenya has approximately 5 times the population of Sweden, and despite that, Sweden has closed down more electricity in my lifetime. I'm only 19 years old, so that's not a long time. But they've closed down more electricity in my lifetime than Kenya has ever had. I just want to start by making that very clear. The second thing I want to say is that it saddens me to hear from Robert that they are not considering connecting the rural economies to the grid, because while I understand that might be quite further in the future, it's absolutely possible for a country the size of Kenya to connect all rural areas to the grid, because Sweden has well and truly succeeded in that. And like a majority of rural Sweden is ages away from anything else, and ages away in the cold, dark north with just forest and forest and forest and more forest, but they can still be connected to the grid. And I think it's, even if it might not be possible right now or even in the near future, it's very worthwhile to keep the hope that it will one day be possible up. The second thing I want to say is that of course there's a massive difference. I did a bit of Googling just now, and on the note of that light bulb that the World Bank thinks is enough, my PC consumes 15 times the electricity of a light bulb. Yeah. And I think it's really worth mentioning the scales of this. When I live for the 14 years of my life that I've lived in Sweden, I've experienced 3 blackouts, none of which lasted more than 3 hours. For the 5 years of my life that I lived in Kenya, I experienced well over 100, with at least 10 that lasted over 5 hours. And I can remember 3 that lasted more than 24 hours. And I think this is very worthwhile to note, that if you are coming from an economy in the global north, you might have no idea what this means. Because when I, before I moved to Kenya when I was 10, my thought was, okay, a blackout, that's oh, the electricity goes off and then 30 minutes later it's back on because there was a massive storm and a tree fell on the electrical line, whatever, they'll fix it. It's fine. And I think it's really worth to try to explain that to people from the global north, that blackouts are not blackouts in the global south are not the same thing as blackouts in the global north. and and I think there's been a communication miss there, and I think there's plenty of communication misses, especially on the energy poverty question, because the idea of energy poverty is so far remote from the global north that it's very hard to have this conversation. Because when I talk with fellow youth activists and I'm like, well, energy poverty is horrible, they're like, oh, but I have a summer cabin in the woods. That's nice. Yes, sure, that might be nice for 2 months out of the year when the weather is as nice as possible and you have brought all your food from the supermarket and you can barbecue every day because you don't have a job because it's your summer break and it's too long to be reasonable. But it's not nice to live with, it's not nice when that is your entire life. And I think that's what we need to talk about, that the global north has fallen into this idea, which I see more and more now, especially on the internet with this cottagecore fad, if you guys have been following the TikTok world. It's white people, primarily women, that dress up in old countryside outfits and they pretend to live off grid. Yeah. And it's but it's so cute, and we can live in the countryside and we can live with the animals and stuff like that. And then they try it for a year and then they're oh, that was horrible. And even then they were still living connected to the grid. And we have to keep this in mind, that it's so far remote that the global north will have a very hard time understanding the situation that is energy poverty, and it really needs to be explained to them and to us in a very simple way. You need to start by saying that I'm not arguing for my right to own a third car or a second TV. I'm arguing for my right to own a washing machine so the women in my household can work. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about fundamental measures of equality. Because that is one of the main reasons why Sweden has been able to maintain such a large female participation in the labor market. It's because we are so electrified that the household labor does not take close to the same amount of time as it would if it wasn't. And I think it's worth mentioning that the energy poverty question connects into everything. It connects into women's equality, it connects into poverty, it connects into food access, it connects into health access, it connects into every single issue that is facing the global south. And I think that is what the global north is not understanding, that all the privileges that we have in the global north, fundamentally, they come from absolutely a strong and powerful fight by unions and by women's rights advocates and by all of these movements, but they also come from the fact that we have had plentiful access to electricity, and we can't forget that. It's not just about the social side, it's also about the material conditions, and that is primarily electricity.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was really, really eye-opening, and I guess the global north will now understand, or take time at least to understand. And I like the fact that you mentioned that even if you are in the villages of the global north, you still have access to the grid. You can still have access to electricity, whilst on the other hand, in Africa, if you are in the village, it means you don't have access to electricity, then you are burning wood and so forth. And then so it speaks to us, when we are developing these energy sources, it means we have to consider the grid built up as well in our system.
I just want to quickly point out that I have a friend that lives 15 kilometers from the nearest gas station, and she runs a gaming PC. All 4 members of her family are able to run a gaming PC at the same time as their washing machine and dishwasher, and their sauna.
You see, look at that. And talking about the washing machine, I've seen how productive one becomes. So in a smaller scale, it really does increase your productivity when you don't have to engage so much onto household unnecessary but necessary activities. So you get to be engaged in more productive, and which aligns with the UN Sustainable Goals as we all know it. So now we'll hear from Alfred, who is a CEO of Leotech and is also very much involved with students, and is running also an innovation hub in Sierra Leone. So to you, Alfred, what is the role of technology and innovation in bridging the energy access gap and fighting environmental pollution as a result?
Yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. I so much believe in the potential of science, innovation, and technology in addressing the climate challenge and also bridging the energy gap. Mostly when I listen to Ia speaks about how much they take electricity for granted in Sweden, I see a world of difference. you see one side of the globe taking something for granted that could save millions of lives on the other side of the globe. And that is the reality. Patricia rightly mentioned how much, for instance, clean cooking solution is a life-saving technology in the global south, and she went further making a call on our stakeholders in the African Union, which is very important, on them taking action on democratizing some of these solutions. As we sit here and speak, 1.1 million Africans are still dying because of indoor pollution. And over 80% of these are women and children. Children who die because of indoor pollution even before they understand how their environment looks like. So this is the reality of Africa. And technology has developed so rapidly, and most of the solutions that we need to address some of the challenges in Africa are already out there. We have solutions for clean cooking, technology solutions for clean cooking. We have proven energy solutions that can really boost our economies. We have proven data sources and ways of getting early warning signs in communities for them to be resilient and for them to be aware of climate change around them. But yet still, these technologies have not been scaled up in the African context. There are chances you can say, yes, it's because of finance, but I strongly also believe that the right policies and the right partnerships are also part of the problem. Because, for instance, you have the liquefied petroleum gas that is accessible, for instance, in Freetown, Sierra Leone, where I live. But then you see, as there is disruption in the global supply chain, the price soars up, and before you imagine, someone who had bought liquefied petroleum gas for cooking at home just ends up discarding it because it is not affordable. And then they go back to charcoal or go back to using biomass for cooking. And this is only, in fact, accessible only in the city, the capital. When you go in the rural communities, you don't have access to those communities, to those solutions. So I strongly believe African governments and stakeholders, even as we, as the science-driven people and the people who are driven by technology, work so hard in the research and development of solutions to climate change and bridging the energy gap, stakeholders should also make those policies that can ensure the democratization of some of these technologies, to ensure that the technologies reach the last mile users. Because we can certainly develop the technology, but if it is too expensive and it is not affordable, then it is worthless, because the last mile users are mostly people that are living below the poverty line. We are talking of providing clean cooking solutions for people that are living below $1 a day in sub-Saharan Africa. So basically, the government, the policymakers have to put policies in place. Let's say, for example, you subsidize the importation of clean cooking solutions in your country. And then as they reach in your country, the price is affordable for the local communities for them to be able to afford it. So technology would really work so hard in providing the solutions, but the stakeholders also really need to put those policies in place to ensure that technology and solutions reach the last mile users. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Alfred. Yes, now you're also calling on policymakers as well as government to actually implement these policies and sustainably, that is. And in terms of technology as well, I'd like to highlight that what you had mentioned is that most of African research gets published, thousands of papers, but none gets commercialized, And some of these research papers and research work, it's actually something that can be used to propel Africa to prosperity. So it's very important that we really emphasize on government taking part into this research and the technology and innovation that is produced by the Africans in their own spaces. So I have the last question, which is very interesting to all my panelists. Now, this is not specific. And also, I would like to acknowledge that we're in the UAE now, and they just built their 4 nuclear power plants, which is amazing, bringing stability and baseload power to the grid. And we have seen in the past 2 days, there has been a historic moment of tripling nuclear. Ghana and Morocco are the only African countries that pledged to this. What is your perspective on the pledge, and if it will address the energy poverty and environmental pollution in your countries and affected communities?
Thank you, Amanda. I think that pledge will definitely trickle down to our countries in Africa, because I guess it's just human nature to like having this herd immunity. You want to first see someone else do it, and then you become comfortable. You're like, okay, they have done it. And it's even better when someone who looks like you does it. So for me, there were 22 countries, beautiful. But for me, the most exciting country in that list is Ghana, because Ghana looks like me. Ghana has my challenges. And them making that pledge, I see it trickling down to other African countries, us feeling more comfortable, and then we shall go down that road. Definitely, it's going to trickle down to other countries.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I would like to hear from you, Robert.
Yeah, so speaking of the Barakan nuclear power station, so actually yesterday we had an opportunity to visit the plant, thanks to ENEC, guys from ENEC, and of course Net Zero Nuclear Hub. And so actually the Korean guys just behind us, they're responsible for building the nuclear power plant. So it's an amazing masterpiece over there. It's amazing how currently there are 4 nuclear reactors over there, but currently 3 are running. And it's amazing how when the whole thing will be over, it will cut down an emission of around 2.4 million grams of carbon that are being emitted in the atmosphere. So it's actually countries like Kenya and maybe Uganda who are looking into they're looking into investing into nuclear power plant. They can have a look at and actually take notes to guys from UAE. It's an amazing technology, and if we introduce it to our respective countries, it can actually serve more than energy. We can use it for agricultural purposes. We can use it for health purposes, as it ticks actually all the boxes. So it's just up to our government to take notes. Not just making up deals and pledges. They need to go down and start constructing these nuclear power plants. Our country is doing a nice job. We actually have a board in place for the whole setting up the whole nuclear power plant. We're just in the final stages of carrying out the feasibility study. Then we go into now starting building the nuclear power plant, which is an amazing thing. And I'm looking forward to one day, coming here and tell our stories about our country having a nuclear power plant. So thank you guys for having this conversation with us, and looking forward to having more of these conversations in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can hear from you now, Abubakar.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Anyway, 2 things happened to me in a row. The first one was I was present when the declaration to triple nuclear energy globally by 22 countries, including IAEA, World Nuclear Association, was done. I was there seeing the world leaders making their pledge. And then the second one was my visit to Baraka plant in a row. The one on the first day and then on the second day. I was super excited seeing how things run, how clean energy is being produced in a peaceful manner without troubling the environment and what have you. So to me, I see it, I'm not a prophet, but what I'm trying to say is nuclear energy has come. And other countries, they have no option. They must join. So the question of whether other countries will join or not doesn't matter to me, because I'm sure definitely these countries are going to join. Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, like she said, we all have similar issues. And then when you see your friend solving a particular equation and getting his answers rightly, I think the best thing for you to do is to use the same method. So like I said, they will join, definitely, I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Abubakar, for the prophetic response. We can hear from you. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, please sheet off Sweden's homework. That would be greatly appreciated. You're free to steal all our methods and everything we do. Just come over, steal it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
No, but what I do want to say is that 40% of Sweden's electricity production is nuclear power. Another 40% is hydro, the remaining 20 is wind and solar, with a bit of waste burning. And it's one of the reasons for Sweden's prosperity, that's a hard word. And it's really worth mentioning that even Sweden, which is the most electrified country in the world, all our heating is done by electricity, all our cooking is done on electricity, even our saunas run on electricity nowadays. The Finnish think we're being scandalous when we run them on electricity because they think coal is better, but we're like, nah. So we run them on electricity too. And I think it's really worth mentioning that despite that, the assumption is that Swedish electricity production will have to double for us to be able to transition. I want everyone here to take a moment to understand what that means for the world. If the most electrified country in the world needs to double their electricity production to achieve net zero, what's the world need to do? It needs to do quite a bit more than triple it. I want everyone to just take a minute to really think about that. Let me ask this question. Who here lives in a country where all your heating is done by electricity? Raise your hand. Right, there's four, okay, 5, 6 of us in this room. Brilliant. All of you other guys, all of you other folks, you're going to need to electrify that. Who here lives in a country where all cooking is done on electricity? Raise your hand. 4 of us? Right, that's going to need to be electrified. Who here lives in a country where all transport runs on electricity? Right, that wasn't a single one of us. Great. You're getting my point here. We need a lot of electricity that we don't have right now, even for the countries that are considered the most developed in this aspect. And I really want us to understand that when we talk about energy effectivity, that is never going to cut it, because maybe we can energy effectivize to get 10% more, but we don't need 10% more. We need like 300% more. And that's what I really want us to keep in mind, that like wind and solar, they're not going to cut it for this. And in Sweden, for example, we have built out all the hydro capacity we can. We did it 100 years ago. We've got no rivers left to put hydro dams in. They've already got hydro dams. Some of them have more than one. Like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Renewables alone are not going to cut it because we need so much electricity. And therefore we have to turn to nuclear power, because the option is turning to fossil fuels. And my generation can't afford that. And I really want to say that I much rather have a just world to live on, where everyone has access to the electricity they need, where we can manage this climate crisis together, than to end up in a world where we haven't succeeded at. And if the cost of that is not being able to run everything on 100% renewables, then that's a cost worth taking. But we have to stop it with fossil fuels, and especially in the global north, we need to do it now, because we really need to ensure that our remaining carbon budget is spared for the global south and their need to develop and industrialize, because we are solving the climate crisis not for the sake of the planet, because the planet doesn't care. We're solving it for the sake of humanity. And that means a world in which everybody has good living conditions and a worthwhile life. And we can't do that without electricity.
Thank you very much, Ia. Thanks so much. Can we hear from you, Alfred?
Yes, thank you so much. The previous speakers have said it beautifully already. Thanks to Net Zero Nuclear, I was given the opportunity to be there on the scene where the 22 countries signed the declaration of tripling down on nuclear power production. And I am so happy that we have 2 African countries also that we are there. That is an amazing thing. My country, Sierra Leone, is already a signatory to the Pavilion Treaty, and also is a IAEA member state. And for the past years, I haven't seen them, of course, in both the government and in the academic institution. I haven't heard anybody mention anything that has to do with at least building the capacity in human capacity in nuclear science and technology. We do not have dedicated courses for nuclear science and technology in our universities in Sierra Leone. So the signing on the the declaration of the tripling of the nuclear power production by 2050 is so amazing, but I'm really looking forward to how this is achieved. I am skeptical on whether or not it is going to be more of a talk show or just a paperwork or theoretical kind of thing than something that can actually be achieved in terms of the context of Africa. I think the governments across Africa, even including those who have signed those declarations, should focus more on taking those bold steps and actions to actually achieve those goals than just saying that they are part of it. They were there for the declaration, they pledged, they signed, and then their communities and their countries are still not taking the bold actions to achieve the purpose of those declarations. And of course, my country, Sierra Leone, I'm really hoping to see first step to include nuclear science and technology dedicated courses in our universities. I think we'll start from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists. Yes, this was insightful. I've learned a lot as well. Because I'm coming from South Africa, at least I do have a washing machine. So, but nonetheless, we still share the same issues because our villages don't have access to the grid. As a result, they use biomass, they use liquid fuels, and so forth. So with that said, I would like to bring it to the audience. If there are any questions to our panelists, please feel free to shoot your questions. Yes, please.
Thank you very much.
Can I just have the mic, maybe? Please introduce yourself and yeah.
Thank you very much for very enlightening discussion. The question that I have is related to what Alfred, I believe, has mentioned, is that if it's not affordable, it's useless. And as you know, by no means nuclear energy is cheap, you know. At least the capital cost is quite expensive. So how do you think moving forward in Africa, a nuclear energy can be implemented basically to solve the issue of energy poverty? Now, I know there is a lot of discussion in the nuclear industry on the small modular reactors. They come at a much lower cost, capital cost. They are safer. So do you think a large-scale nuclear power plants solution should be implemented in Africa, or rather a more economical small modular reactors? So,
thank you for your question. Who would like to take the question? Abubakar, you can go ahead.
Well, the question was directed on what Alfred said, but I think I have a few answers to you. First of all, the question of capital is a question of concern, of course, but then there are other projects in Africa which have not been done by the government. Take, for example, the refinery built in Africa. I think it's the largest fleet in the world, built by Dangote as an investor, private investor. Now, the oil and gas industry were able to convince him that if he built that refinery, he's going to make profit. Why can't the nuclear industry convince people like that if they invest such money into our business, they are going to earn a lot of money? So if they can do that, it's happening in Nigeria. So we can also do the same. Another thing is in the declaration, I don't know if you have a look at it, the countries who signed the declaration made it as a commitment that they will try as much as possible to see that the World Bank henceforth finance nuclear projects, contrary to the previous policy where the World Bank is not allowed to finance nuclear projects. Also, they also made a pass to the regional development banks to also help in financing such projects. So to me, going forward, the question of cost will be raised to that, even if not all. At least we are going to reduce the magnitude of that problem. Thank you.
If I may just add a few words to that. So basically, I have a mentor that is based in the UK. He said he has worked in a nuclear submarine for some 15 years or so. And most times when I discuss nuclear with him, one of these points of skepticism he would express is that Africa does not have the human resource or human capacity to own and manage nuclear power plants. So, and to some extent, he is right. Probably if you build a nuclear power plant, for instance, in Sierra Leone, there are no nuclear energy engineers in Sierra Leone. So probably you would have to depend on experts from overseas to come and manage those plants. So I think building the human resource or the human capacity in Africa also to be able to manage those technologies, to own them locally, would really make sense.
Thank you very much.
Well, can I chip to that? Sorry.
No, I will take it outside the panel discussion. Thank you so much. And we have come to the end of our discussion, and I would like to give most thanks to Net Zero Nuclear for giving us the incredible opportunity of organizing this in their pavilion. And we do not inherit our world or our earth from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children. So we should remember that, and we should make sure that we go for clean energies such that we have a sustainable, and I have a new term that I would like everyone to think of, just equitable energy transition. So let's go think about that, and then we can implement the solutions in our communities. Thank you very much.